I'm going to prepare you for the upcoming UFO hearing scheduled for Tuesday, September 9th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Eastern. It is titled or called Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. What a great title for a hearing. Now, I will briefly cover the people that are going to be in it, but I want to take a broader approach by just covering what it means and other areas of interest relevant to the hearing. And to accomplish that, I'm going to cover a space that happened on August 17, 2025, in which Representative Eric Burleson was interviewed for a few hours straight on X. And some of the things he conveyed were extremely important, and I went over it like a fine-tooth comb, and we're going to cover some of the things he said, and this is going to be a broad spectrum preparation for the upcoming hearing that at this point is days away. In the following clip, Representative Eric Burleson from the X space is speaking about David Grusch, who is a special advisor for Eric Burleson on unidentified aerial phenomena issues. So he works for Eric Burleson, the member of Congress. And just so you know, TSSCI stands for Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information, and it's a high-level clearance.
So he's able to get the TS clearance, but not able to get the TSSCI. So we were still waiting for Tulsi's office to approve that. So that's kind of waiting out there, right? We get to the April week. On Monday, Grusch flies in. He and I have a meeting with AARO, a very productive meeting. And I will say, at that meeting, it became abundantly clear that I'd made the right decision, because AARO was not as informed as Grusch is on this entire topic. In fact, they were picking Grusch's brain. When you're in a room and they're literally like turning all attention to him and trying to pull information out of him, it became clear that, the person that really knows what's going on. And he was giving them advice on what to do, where to go, where to look, who to talk to, all of those things.
So that's verification by Representative Burleson that UFO whistleblower David Grusch has met with AARO and told them about the alleged cover-up and that they were all ears. Now that's really promising. I know that, as far as I can tell, David Grusch was reluctant to interact with the former head, Dr. Shankar Patrick, but the current head, Dr. John Kotslotsky, maybe David Grusch feels much more comfortable interacting with him as the current head of AARO.
So you mentioned that Mr. Grusch doesn't have the SCI portion of his TS clearance. Has he been able to accompany you into a SAP qualified skiff to have a complete discussion of his experience on UAPTF, or is any of that information restricted by virtue of his not having a renewed SCI?
It is restricted. And to answer your question, we've not been able to do that. And as a result, ironically, he works for me. I still don't know everything that he knows.
Sure. So quick follow-up. You mentioned that AARO was really following his lead in a discussion that you had. That must have been even just at the TS level, minus SAP readings, even so.
So that was probably at that level, because there was things that he was able to talk to the AARO staff about that they weren't even willing to talk to me about.
Representative Eric Burleson has a TSSCI clearance. He's on the HPSI. That is the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which affords him that clearance. Now, David Grusch, as we've already discussed, does not have TSSCI clearance. He only has top secret clearance. But nevertheless, he was able to discuss things with AARO that he wasn't able to discuss with Eric Burleson, even though Eric Burleson has a higher security clearance, presumably because it was ascertained by AARO that Eric Burleson does not have a need to know. Because it's not just your level of clearance that determines whether you get access to information. It's also the question of whether you have a need to know or not. Now, the reason this is all relevant to the upcoming hearing is because some people have said that, David Grusch has all the information, the names, the locations, how the cover-up is conducted, and so forth. And in case you don't know, David Grusch provided extensive classified testimony to congressional staffers, reportedly totaling around 11 hours. This testimony was given primarily to members and staff of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, and they were the ones that organized the public hearing on July 26, 2023. Now, he also gave classified testimony to the Intelligence Community Inspector General after filing a whistleblower complaint under PPD 19, Presidential Policy Directive 19, seeking protections for its disclosure about UAP programs and alleged government concealment. The ICIG, that's the Intelligence Community Inspector General, designated his complaint as credible and urgent, which intensified congressional review. So, the question is, why are we having, and others have asked this, why are we having a hearing coming up when Grusch already has all the information, has already given the information to the authorities, if you will? And that's a question we will explore as we continue covering this X space that Burleson was the main person in.
Yeah. And a lot of those financial questions are things that if we can only get so far, and then I think that what we're planning to do is after the next hearing, or at the next hearing, is issue letters to all the contractors that you all are aware of that are the way that Grusch, they're called interrogatories. And in order to get them to have to come forward to tell us information. And so that's part of our plan.
So when Burleson says issue letters to all the contractors that you are all aware of course he's referencing Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and those class of contractors who have allegedly been given non-human recovered craft to study and exploit in terms of any technology or technological breakthroughs they can make by studying the alleged recovered craft. So when he says they're planning to issue interrogatories to contractors Grusch has named, he means they will send formal written questions to specific defense contractors or private entities allegedly involved in UAP-related SAPs. And those contractors will be legally obligated to respond. This is a serious escalation from informal requests or hearings. It signals that Congress wants documented sworn answers to probe further into the claims of concealment, legacy programs, and crash retrieval operations. So that should be interesting, and I'm glad that Representative Burleson is pursuing that.
What process would you want them to follow in order to be properly vetted? Given that if they have, because it's kind of a catch-22, because to be vetted, they have to prove that they know information, but then that's classified information. So how do they share that with you to prove that they're legit?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like a wink sort of thing. Like, hey, I know stuff. Like, how do you go about it?
So, having Grusch on staff is the key. So he is able to do background checks on individuals, and he knows everybody. He knows a ton of people in the intelligence community, so he's able to kind of verify if people are being accurate about what they're saying.
I think David Grusch would be an extremely good candidate or person to vet potential whistleblowers. He did work in the U.S. intelligence community for over 14 years. He served as an intelligence officer both in the U.S. Air Force and most recently at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, reaching the rank equivalent to a full bird colonel as a GS-15 civilian. So I'm sure over that amount of time, he's made a lot of connections with people in the intelligence community, and that would certainly be an asset for him to vet potential whistleblowers.
Senator Burleson, I wanted to know, with the TSSCI clearance, which I guess Grusch is still trying to get, or he has it. Either way, once he has it, why don't you just hop in a skiff, just you and him, have him explain to you the locations? Because he said in the hearing, he testified that he knows the locations, he knows the names of all these people. Why do you have to play this like ring around the rosy with other people? Can't you just jump in a skiff with him, have him tell you where all the stuff is, and then you guys just go there with your clearance and get it done? Do you really need a bill? Do you need any of this in between stuff?
I mean, to be perfectly legal, no, we can't just do that without, with hope. He at the end of the day, David has an NDA, so does Lou, and many others that we talk to. And if they really care about this country and about respecting the rule of law, which most of them do, absolutely, that's kind of what we're limited by. But I think that getting Tulsi and her office to clear him is one hurdle, and then getting the House staff and the Sergeant of Arms to clear him is the second. I think that if Tulsi's office clears him, and the other aspect is he could be hired by Tulsi. He could be hired by the White House. If Grusch were hired by any of these agencies, then it all goes away.
That was a good question by the questioner. However, what I would have asked Burleson as maybe a follow-up to what he asked is not so much why can't Burleson get in a skiff with Grusch, receive the necessary information, then go to the facilities, allegedly housing the recovered craft and partaking in the cover-up, and then dismantle it. What I would have asked is, well, obviously Burleson cannot receive that information from Grusch, maybe because Burleson would have to do it in a special way to where it was legally perceived that he has a need to know. And also Grusch right now does not have the higher classification, TSSCI. He only has top secret clearance. But what I would have asked Burleson, and I'd like to interview Burleson at some point, I hope I get that opportunity, I would have said, Representative Burleson, David Grusch testified under oath about UAP allegations to congressional staffers affiliated with the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He gave them all the information. The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, or HPSI, he gave them all the information, locations, names, everything. Reportedly, he testified to them for like 11 hours. And then he did the same thing to the Intelligence Community Inspector General. And he did it legally. He filled out an urgent concern complaint, giving extensive classified testimony. So it's not like Grusch has not given all this information up already. So the real question is not why can't Burleson hop in a skiff with Grusch, but why hasn't the Intelligence Community Inspector General or the staffers that were working for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, who got all that information from Grusch, why haven't they pursued the investigation? And I did ask ChatGPT what they thought, but I'm not going to share that here. I would much prefer to ask someone like Representative Burleson or somebody else why that hasn't occurred. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, there's absolutely a UFO cover-up. And we need to dismantle that. And it's like, if Grusch already spilled the beans, then why are we continuing to have hearings? But I think it's much more complicated than that. There's a lot of nuance here. And at some point, hopefully I'll have the knowledge and understanding that share that with you, whether it comes from further investigation on my part or interviewing someone who knows a lot more about this. But either way, the upcoming hearing, on September 9th is still going to be huge progress. And furthermore, now that I recall, DNI Tulsi Gabbard was on Podforce One podcast with Miranda Devine on August 6th, and she stated the following.
We're continuing to look for the truth and share that truth with the American people.
I think that's critical because we have the sitting director of national intelligence going on record conveying that she's looking for the truth and wants to share it with the American people. So as these hearings continue to happen and it becomes more and more obvious to the American people that someone's lying here, you know, some people think it's the whistleblowers, some people think it's the government, but someone's lying here. I do think this is going to pressure this upcoming hearing, and the ones that are going to come after it are going to pressure the U.S. government to really stop giving us lip service. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of it. We're going to make our effort, but actually do something more tangible, like, for example, pass the UAP Disclosure Act that would give an investigatory body more power to get the information that Congress and the American people are asking for.
I think that if you're going to get any kind of level of disclosure, I have become convinced, and I can be convinced otherwise, but right now I'm convinced that if you really want to get to the truth and you want to get to the truth quickly and have quick disclosure, then you offer amnesty in a short-term window. So you say, over the next year, for example, anybody that comes forward and confesses their sins is receiving amnesty, and after that, it's not there. And I think that will kind of force some players to come forward.
Earlier in this space, Representative Burleson said that he thinks the reason the cover-up is persisting is because there are people in the intelligence community who just don't want to go to jail, don't want to be prosecuted, don't want to be held responsible for crimes that have taken place. Crimes like taking money and saying it's going to go one place, but then it actually goes into the UFO issue. And then also not telling Congress about what they're doing and obstructing the laws of oversight. And then what he just said in this clip, I think is pretty brilliant. And I also agree with him that if we want to get disclosure, we really have to remove the biggest bottleneck to disclosure, which I think more than any other consideration is the fear of going to jail from people who are involved in the secrecy. And if something was set up where they had a year to come forward and spill the beans, and as long as they do that, they won't be prosecuted. But if they do it after that period of time, they will be prosecuted. I do think the cover-up would be resolved with that kind of legal implementation. And I support that legal implementation within reason. Obviously, if someone committed truly awful crimes like murder, then we need to hold those people accountable. But if they partook in withholding information from Congress and engaging in unconstitutional secrecy, let's give them a pass so that we can end the cover-up.
No, I'm driven by secrecy. I do not like a government that keeps secrets from me, from you, from taxpayers, from its citizens. I'm very passionate about the fact that the government belongs to us, and we own it. We're the ones that they should be having to give account for, and to me, the fact that they feel like they arrogantly that they can keep secrets from us is what pisses me off and what drives me to kind of disclose all of this stuff.
I really love what Burleson said there. And yeah, it really does come down to arrogance. I think you would need a default level of arrogance to feel justified to lie to all of humanity about their place in the universe. I personally do not buy the idea that the motivation to preserve national security is sufficient to give people the audacity to lie to so many people about something so important. So arrogance is kind of built into the psychology, in my opinion. And my hope with this upcoming hearing that will ultimately lead to more hearings is not only that more and more American citizens and world citizens begin to internalize this truth, that the arrogance is what's keeping the cover up afloat in many respects. But also, we can't continue being lied to in this way. And maybe civilization will have a tipping point at some point during this disclosure process where we collectively, or at least enough of us, become intolerant of these lies. And that filters into government systems, which leads to disclosure, assuming we get disclosure from our governments, because disclosure can come from other origins as well.
How can you have faith or confidence in the process when it's a little bit circular in terms of the manner in which you get secrecy adjudicated by people being allowed to come in and give classified testimony versus public testimony? The juiciest bits are going to be classified.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The goal is to figure out a way to take what we learn in a classified setting and disclose it without jeopardizing national security. So we're going, like, if I walk out of the room and suddenly I say, look, folks, I can't tell you what I saw or what I heard, but my worldview is totally changed. Those are the kind of things that that I think that we can at the very least do. But I also think that what we can do is try to press the system and figure out any ways that we can to kind of to let information get out. Because I think that the intelligence community wants disclosure to happen. They just want to do it in such a way that nobody goes to jail.
This is such an important point by Representative Burleson, and a point I've made myself when people claim that, well, since all the classified information is going to be shared in a closed setting within a SCIF, how is that going to impact the disclosure process or lead to transparency? And Burleson underscores exactly how, because if he goes into a closed setting environment in a SCIF, because he has the clearance, and he is told information that changes his worldview, yeah, he can't say, oh, by the way, in the event that the following is classified, he can't say to the public, oh, by the way, there is a UFO crash retrieval program. We have retrieved non-human intelligence craft and bodies, and we're not alone. No, he may not be able to say that, but if he says, and other members of Congress say, after being in a SCIF with witnesses or whistleblowers, that my entire worldview has changed, that's a way to communicate to the public, essentially, that, yeah, the UFO issue is way bigger than human technologies, but I can't give you specifics. And while that may not trigger disclosure, it will accomplish something that I talked about earlier in this video, which it will make people, American citizens and world citizens, less tolerant of the continued lies. Because it's like if members of Congress are coming out of a SCIF after talking to witnesses and whistleblowers in a classified setting and making these huge claims that, or expressions that, my worldview has completely changed, then that's a signal to civilization that we're being lied to, and it will make civilization, it will make American citizens less tolerant of the policy of secrecy. Like, okay, if we're not alone, just spill the beans. It could help get the UAP Disclosure Act passed and so forth. And Burleson reiterated that it's not necessarily that the intelligence community, by and large, doesn't want disclosure. The bottleneck is that they don't want to go to jail over disclosure. So, self-preservation is a huge human motivation. So it makes sense that, this is preventing transparency. So we do need, in my opinion, as Burleson mentioned earlier, we do need to provide amnesty so that we can finally end the policy of secrecy.
And I would say one of the most memorable conversations I've had was the one that I had recently, where Anna Polina Luna and myself met with a whistleblower. I had to travel to get there, and I mean, it took me an entire day to get there and back. And it was someone who is coming from the nautical source, and so the activity that's happening under the ocean is what he was talking about, and it was kind of remarkable. Almost reminded me of the movie Abyss. To give you asked me about a movie.
Oh yeah,
he didn't say Abyss, but the things he was talking about reminded me of the movie Abyss.
Now, in regards to the water kind of formation or the like almost jellyfish manta ray beings.
No, just that there is a structure in the deep ocean.
So this witness that Representative Burleson and Luna saw met, I don't think he's going to be in the upcoming hearing, and I obviously don't know why. Maybe because he'll be in another future hearing. Who knows? Maybe he didn't agree to be in the upcoming hearing. But the idea that he claims there's a structure in the ocean, presumably from the context of what Burleson said, some kind of non-human intelligence base, is extraordinary if it's true. Now, in fairness to Burleson, after that portion of the interview, he went on to say, look, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's what I've been told. Understood. But either way, this is one of the reasons I think disclosure is so important. And I've mentioned this in the past, is that it would bring such wonder to the world that we never had before. Because now you're suddenly in a situation where the movie The Abyss is a plausible representation of what could be going on in our world. Why take that away from people? Why relegate that only to the intelligence community or to the national security apparatus, and at that only a small segment of the national security apparatus and the intelligence community? It's just a tragedy. It's a tragedy for all of humankind. And after disclosure, we're going to look back and collectively think it was ridiculous. I don't think the narrative is going to be, oh, I'm so glad the national security state kept me from knowing we're not alone because it's so scary. No, I think it's going to be, why did you withhold that extraordinary wonder from my life? That was wrong and unthinkable.
To me, when I walked away from the Grusch hearing that we had, I thought, it's really compelling. He seems like he knows his stuff, and I don't doubt that what he's saying is true in his worldview. But at the end of the day, everything that he said was secondhand information. So it's all him relaying things that he has been told by other people. This hearing that we're getting ready to have is predominantly individuals that have had firsthand regular interactions with UAP.
We're going to briefly get into the actual witnesses in a moment, but some people would take issue with what Burleson said in that previous clip, because while they technically are firsthand witnesses, as I understand it, although I could be wrong, there might be some surprises in our understanding when the hearing actually unfolds. But as I understand it now, none of these witnesses worked for the legacy program, the crash retrieval program. And so if they were witnesses of UAP, maybe it was more like a sighting than actually examining the craft itself. But either way, I appreciate what Burleson had to say, and I'm still very hopeful for a very fruitful UFO hearing on the 9th.
So to give you an idea who we've got, one individual is a former U.S. Air Force veteran who is going to speak to 5 UAP incidents during his time that he witnessed and that he investigated. You've got another individual who is a Navy officer who witnessed UAP events firsthand, and then another U.S. Air Force officer who has witnessed firsthand events. So we've got, and I'm not going to give their names, but those are the individuals that we've been working on. We often have people trying to get, that have already come out publicly. And I think that a lot of people some people want those, but I think that what's better is if we bring forward some new perspectives and people that have not come forward until this moment.
So here are the 4 witnesses that will be in the upcoming hearing. Jeffrey Nucatelli, U.S. Air Force veteran. Chief Alexandra Wiggins, UAP witness. UAP journalist George Knapp, and Dylan Borland, UAP witness, U.S. Air Force veteran. I'll be honest, I haven't dug into these witnesses much. The only one I'm really familiar with is Chief Alexandra Wiggins, who witnessed some tic-tac-shaped UAP while on a Navy ship as a member of the Navy. And then, of course, George Knapp, who's a journalist. Now, the one good advantage about George Knapp is that he has no non-disclosure agreements. And during the course of the hearing, he can talk about UFOs in a way that helps inform the public of what's going on based upon his vast knowledge and experience. And I don't think that's a trivial contribution to a hearing like this. I'm open-minded about the other witnesses, and I haven't dug into them much, and in some sense, I would argue it might even be a little redundant. We're going to watch the hearing and get to see them talk. So for me to tell you about the witnesses, before you even watch the interview, could be seen as a little bit of redundancy. Though I might upload a video tomorrow at some point, and maybe we can delve further into that.
Also, if you get hundreds of millions of people all, by the way, clamoring and electing people, that's how you get elected, it's going to force information to the fore. And so if it becomes a big issue that a lot of voters are saying, what the hell are you doing? Then
I agree.
Yeah.
And your optimism is inspirational to me.
I think it's a good way to end this video. That was from Vice News. Shane Smith Has Questions when he interviewed Jeremy Corbell. I think Shane brings up a good point that the UFO issue could become a serious voting issue at some point. And if that ever happens, then the candidate that promises transparency is the more likely candidate to get elected. We already see members of the administration openly talking about UFOs. Tulsi Gabbard, even the administrator of NASA, and others. So the proposition that it will enter the presidential debates for the next election is plausible. And the upcoming hearing that is slated and will happen on September 9th can contribute to that progression. And I see the upcoming hearing as a piece of UFO history, because it's my opinion we will eventually get UFO disclosure. It's inevitable. And so this will be an important part of that trajectory in historical record. And I'm going to remain open-minded and optimistic that this hearing will push the ball down the field. With that, please don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you could become a patron, you could become a YouTube member, you could give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll appreciate it so much. Thanks so much for watching. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all YouTube members, patrons, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.